Hey guys, it's Madison, and if you have any experience watching this channel before, you probably know that I've been learning Korean for quite some time. In fact, since 2010, so it's been almost 12 years now that I've been learning Korean. And recently I watched a video done by Elise Speaks where she talks about how much money she kind of spends on language learning, and she took the approach of kind of talking about kind of from month to month what she usually spends on her language learning process. I found that video really interesting because her expenses and just kind of where she places both her time and her money in language learning are just so very different from my personal experience. And so I thought I'd make kind of a similar but also quite different video talking about the total amount of money that I've spent on learning Korean over my 12 years of learning Korean. Also, if you hear some like weird noises in the background, my dog is just off screen chewing on a little hide stick thing. And so I don't know if that'll be audible at all during the video, but just a warning. So there are kind of two primary ways that I have spent money on language learning throughout the years. The first one being textbooks, and the second one being on drama watching platforms, specifically Drama Fever and Viki. So first thought I just kind of go through the books that I have bought for learning learning Korean specifically over the past 12 years. I'm going to go kind of chronologically through them, and I'm going to put the price not only of each book on the screen, but also just kind of a running total on the screen as well, so you can kind of see how it accumulated over time. So I started learning languages, like I said, back in the fall of 2010, which was when I was in 10th grade in high school. And at that time, I was pretty frugal. I've always been pretty frugal, honestly, which should probably be pretty evident by the end of this video. But in high school especially, I didn't have a ton of extra funds that I was really willing to put towards my Korean learning, even though I was gaining interest in the language. So the two resources that I have from that time period are these two. Read and Speak Korean for Beginners, and then Integrated Korean 1. This one I picked up at the local bookstore, this one I found online. And this is so long ago, honestly, at this point, I don't recall if I asked my parents to get it for me or if I bought it myself. For the sake of this video, I'm only going to be adding the things that I actually purchased personally to my total. I'm going to point out the things that were gifts and talk about how much they're worth later, but for the sake of the total, I'm only including actual purchases from me. But since I can't remember, I'm just going to go ahead and put these as purchases that I did myself. And these are the only two resources that I had for my high school period. So the first 3 years, just these two things. Moving on to college. In college, I became more serious about learning Korean, and kind of following along with that, the number of resources that I used increased. But quite a few of them were gifts at this point of time. During college, these 5 books were what I added to my bookshelf. And these 3 of them I know for sure were gifts from my parents. I would ask for a textbook whenever my parents were like, hey, what do you want for your birthday? Or hey, what do you want for Christmas? And so that's how I got quite a few of the things on my shelf. But so I know I didn't pay for these. I'm going to, again, like I said, at the end kind of mention how much all these things are in value, but I'm only going to be adding these two to the actual total for things I actually purchased. So News in Korean, and then the Beginning Korean Grammar and News. I'm not actually sure if this is a gift or not, I just can't remember. So I'm just gonna say that I paid for it just in case. And then the summer before my senior year of college, I actually studied abroad. I'm not going to include the price of the plane ticket or any of that stuff just because it would severely inflate the total that I spent, and also is more for me about the actual experience of being in Korea, more so than going just to learn languages. So I'm not going to include the trip costs of that, but I am going to include the textbook and the workbook that I had to buy for my Korean language class that I did take while I was there. And then also while I was there for study abroad, I also went to the bookstore and purchased a couple books, including these 2 Korean language learning books. So those are all the books that I bought all the way from when I started learning Korean all the way through 2016. And honestly, those are all the books, as far as textbooks go, that I bought for Korean all the way through when I went back to Korea, when I moved there in 2019. And sometime during that year, I bought 2 more books because I was planning on taking the topic during that year. So I got 2 books, like I said. I got this advanced Korean vocabulary book, which honestly I kind of regret. I don't like vocabulary books, so I don't know what possessed me to buy it. But I did use it quite a bit. And then I also got this topic prep kind of set with 3 books inside. and I used that to prepare for the topic, which I took for the second time in Korea. So these are all of the textbooks that I personally purchased throughout my 12 years of learning Korean, and then these are the 3 that I know for sure I received as gifts. So I'm not counting them again in the total, but I will go ahead and just throw them on the stack there. And then other than textbooks, I also have purchased a few just like reading books, like fiction, nonfiction kind of books throughout the years. And I thought I'd go through those as well because those are also related to language learning. So the first one is actually a gift. I got this back in college again for my birthday, and it's Harry Potter in Korean. And again, that was a gift, so I'm not going to include it in the total. And then I didn't buy any books because again, I was kind of beginner, intermediate, all the way up until my study abroad trip. And during that trip in 2016, in addition to those textbooks I mentioned earlier, I also got these 3 kind of children's books because I had realized when trying to go through this Harry Potter book that it was a little bit above my level at that time. So I got some kind of more children's level books that I wanted to go through first to kind of get my literary reading level up a little bit before I started to read more kind of young adult or adult fiction or nonfiction. And then I didn't actually buy any more books for a while. I had a friend's mom travel to Korea, and my friend was like, hey, do you want any books from Korea while I'm there? Or while my mom's there. And I was like, hey, I don't need anything specific. But if she happens to see anything that looks interesting, then sure, I'll take a book or 2. And so I got these 2 books as a gift from my friend's mom when she traveled to Korea. I never met my friend's mom, but thank you, Claire's mom, if you ever for some reason watch this video. So again, these were gifts, so I'm not going to include them in the total. And then I didn't buy any more books until 2020, at the end of my time living there in Daegu, where I got a couple of books. I got 2 fiction books. And again, even at this time, I think I had tried to read those adult fiction novels, adult level fiction novels, and they were just, I don't know, literary words are different than just conversational words. So there was still kind of just a lot of unknown vocabulary. So I decided to get kind of 2 young adult or kind of like middle school-ish, high school-ish level books to get to practice my, to get my literary reading skills up before I went back to those adult reading level books. And then I also got, on the flip side, this Korean linguistics book, just because I'm interested in linguistics. It was my major field for my master's degree, and I think Korean linguistics in particular is interesting. This is the one book out of all of these books that I have not read yet, and I'm going to work on that in the next few weeks, hopefully. So yeah, I have used all of these books, read them fully, again, except for this Korean linguistics book. So yeah, these are the 5 books that I have bought personally, and then add to that the 3 gifts that I've gotten to just make all of the fiction and nonfiction books that I own for my Korean language learning purposes. So you can kind of see that throughout the 12 years that I've been studying Korean, I've amassed quite a hefty collection of textbooks, at least for me, for someone who does not like spending money. I'm sure some of you watching probably have more books, some of you probably have less, I don't know, everyone's different, but for me, this seems like a massive collection, like it's difficult to hold, it's so heavy. And yeah, those are all of the textbooks and books that I have purchased or that have been gifted to me throughout my 12 years of studying. And as you can see, if you break it down kind of on a yearly basis, it's honestly not that big of an investment, even though it seems like a lot of books. And if you look at the total, it might seem like a lot of money, considering, how much it is over the years for a hobby that I spent quite a bit of time on and that has produced quite a lot of results since I am now fluent in Korean. I'm pretty happy with this stack of books. So that's it as far as books and textbooks are concerned, but there have been a couple of other expenses. Like I mentioned with this set of books, I've taken the topic before, I've taken it twice. I just held up my whole hand twice. The first time was in 2018 in the US, and that cost $40. And then the second time was in Korea, and that cost 40,000 won. And so overall I spent, $75 on taking the topic in Korean, which I did to just kind of see where my level matched up on this official standardized tests. And then beyond that, the only other expense I've had in terms of Korean language learning is, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, drama watching sites, Drama Fever and Viki specifically. With Drama Fever, it was honestly kind of hard to even see how much I had spent just because the site totally shut down and you can't access your account anymore on the website. But there is a way you can kind of see part of your account on the app still, which I haven't deleted. So I can see that I've had an account on Drama Fever since 2014, I think it was. And so if I just assume that starting then I was a premium member, like a paying member of Drama Fever, then it works out to just under $200 for from that time until 2018 when they closed. And then for Vicky, I can actually see how much I spent, and it is $230 basically over the past however many years since the fall of 2018 when Drama Fever stopped working. So as you can see, that is definitely the biggest expense that I have paid for as far as kind of Korean language learning related things. Now, to be fair, I didn't really get those subscriptions because I was trying to learn Korean specifically. It was more because I just like watching dramas and variety shows, but it is kind of connected to my language learning, and because of those dramas, I really improved my Korean a lot, so I'm gonna go ahead and include it because I think it's kind of connected, even though it's not necessarily, I didn't pay for it because of language skills, if that makes sense. But yeah, that is all the money I have spent on Korean language learning related things over the past 12 years. If you did watch Elise's video, you'll probably tell that the ways that I spend my money are quite different than her. She mostly spends it on phone apps and like italki lessons, stuff like that, whereas I have never spent money on a Korean language learning app, or italki lessons. Nothing wrong with them, it's just not where I like to put my money. I personally would rather have something physical, like a book. And as far as like online resources go, I feel like I kind of find free stuff that fills in the gaps, and that works for me. Again, different people can spend, a different value on things and think it's worth it for them to buy, and that's totally up to them. But yeah, looking at the value of all the things that I spent my money on, it does kind of add up to a surprisingly big number in my opinion. But when you do break it down based on year or based on month, it's honestly quite reasonable and quite cheap, you almost might even say, considering how much value I've gained from them, as well as the free resources that I've used, like Talk to Me in Korean and other stuff. So yeah, I thought I spent money in the past 12 years. I'm curious to know if you guys spend your money on similar ways in language learning, you spent more, less, what you spend on, that kind of stuff. So let me know in the comments, and yeah, until next time, annyeong.